that you guys find this presentation helpful, because I feel like it's really helpful for us, just as speech pathologists and just people in general. I think that we've been through a rough couple of years and we still are not done, right? Let me just move this so I don't want to look at myself. So I apologize. But I think we've really been through a really tough couple of years, and we're still going through a really rough time. We are still not out of, this pandemic, even though we're kind of moving out of it. They're calling it an endemic, but we're still kind of in it. We're in this weird place right now. And so I think that this was something that really resonated with me that we need to talk about. So many SLPs are going through so much, and I just thought that this was something that we should kind of talk about. So forgive me, sometimes you'll see me looking over here. Sometimes I'm looking at notes that I have, so I just kind of want to give you some background information before we start. So let's get started. The burnout is real, strategies to assist the burnt out speech pathologist. And just give me 1 second. Okay, so I already kind of went through this. Like I said, I gave you guys a whole spiel about my background, so I won't even touch on this slide. And I just want to tell you in the beginning of the presentation where you can find me. So just in case you have to jump out, I understand we are at home, we have different priorities and we have different things that we need to kind of do. If you want to contact me, if you feel like at any point, she said something that maybe resonated with me, or I just want to follow up, here's my contact information. So you can find me on Instagram and Facebook under the same name, Kit Therapy and Consulting. Kit happens to be my middle name. Weird, but true. And then you can also find me under Kit Therapy and Consulting at gmail.com. Okay, so right here, I just want to tell you that and ask you permission to offer you something free at the end of the presentation. Is that okay with everyone? If it's cool, I see you can give me a thumbs up. You can send a thumbs up. Okay, perfect. Great. So we're going to jump right in. So before we get into this, I'll say that if anyone attended the other Sisters workshop presentation that I did before, I really have this obsession with Sophia from the Golden Girls. I used to love the Golden Girls, and I always loved when she started talking about Picture It, Sicily, and she always would go into that. I always thought it was pretty cool. So I do have a Picture It moment. But before we get into that, I kind of want to know how many years have you guys been SLPs? So if there's anyone who's been an SLP for you just got into being an SLP to about 2 years, give me a thumbs up. Oh, no. Oh, okay. We have one. I'm going to call you a newbie to it. Okay. So one newbie. Anyone been in the field for maybe 3 to 7 years? You can give me a thumbs up for that if you have. Okay. I see Latavia. Okay. Okay. All right. And I know we also have some non-SLPs here. Thank you for coming and supporting and just coming to find out more information. How about anyone over 7 years? Over 7 years. Okay. So I call you guys the veterans, right? We're kind of like the veterans in here, but that doesn't mean that just because we're veterans, we don't experience some of the same things that some of the new clinicians are experiencing, right? And anyone work in medical SLPs here? You can just give a thumbs up if you are. Okay. What about, I'm going to assume school-based SLPs? Okay. So I think most people are school-based SLPs. Okay. So I'm just trying to get a little sense of who I'm talking to right now, right? So, okay. So let me set the scene for my Picture It story. This Picture It story is very personal to me. It is something that happened to me last year, well, 2 years ago now. And this is a true story. So picture it, Brooklyn, 2020, okay, December of 2020. So we're in the midst of COVID. At that time, I was still working at home, okay? So I'm remote teaching at this point. My son is also at home because everything is shut down. He's home and I'm on lunch break. Now, my son is at the time was in the first grade. He was 6 years old, and I had 2 sessions left after lunch. So let me give you some background story. So the night before, my aunt took a nasty fall. It was unexpected. She fell in the house. And so she was rushed to the hospital. And so, the whole day I'm coordinating with my cousins and other family members on how we're going to get my dad up to the hospital to see her, because she lived in Harlem. So we're trying to coordinate schedules and things like that. And we're like, okay, on Friday, because it was Thursday, we're going to go up to the hospital. In the midst of all of these things, I get the call that my aunt has passed away. Okay. So now my aunt has passed away. I'm kind of having a little moment because I'm crying. My son's crying. No one else is home with me. And now I have to tell my dad that this was his last surviving sister. But now I have the responsibility of telling my dad that his sister has passed away. My dad walks in about 10 to 15 minutes before I'm supposed to start my next session. So my dad comes in. I have to give this unfortunate news. So I tell my dad, he's crying, I'm crying, my son's crying, and I'm supposed to start working in about 10 to 15 minutes. And needless to say, does anyone think I was able to do the next 2 sessions? Yeah, no, I couldn't, right? I was a mess. I'm overwhelmed. I'm thinking about I have to teach, but I can't, sometimes you're able to kind of pull yourself together. It just wasn't that type of situation. And so I'm thinking about, I have to compose myself and try to deal with real life, but I just couldn't deal with real life at that point. And I say all of this to say that is one incidence of burnout. Okay. And for me, it was overwhelming. It was exhausting, and I did not know how to cope. So now I'm going to switch totally and tell you about the definition that Oxford Dictionary gives us of the term burnout. So Oxford Dictionary says that burnout is the physical or mental collapse caused by overwork or stress. And in 2020, the Brazilian occupational medicine publication says that burnout syndrome is a condition where they have 3 main parts. It says there's emotional exhaustion, depersonalization, and low personal accomplishment. Now, those are really 3 complex terms. It's very wordy. You may not know what that means. So I'll just give you a brief overview of what that means. So the first part, emotional exhaustion, is the depletion of an individual's physical and emotional resources. Depersonalization is when you are indifferent or distant. You have distant interactions with colleagues and with clients. And then low personal accomplishment is a tendency toward negative self-perception and a lack of individual or occupational satisfaction. It can also induce feelings of hopelessness, loneliness, anxiety, anger, irritability, and symptoms, actual physical symptoms of headache, nausea, muscle tension, fatigue, hypertension, and insomnia. Now, did I have some of these? Of course, because I was also going through, we had a tragedy that happened in our family, but I think the tragedy that happened was just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back, that I couldn't take anymore because of all of the stress and feeling overworked from the pandemic and everything else that was compiled on top of it. So now we're going to jump into some data. Okay, so according to ASHA's Work-Life Survey in 2015, it polled over 2,200 SLPs in various settings, and only 4% were dissatisfied with their career, which I think is actually, I think that's a pretty good number. I think it's pretty low when you think about just people, their overall, satisfaction with their job. I think that that's pretty low, that people were just, only 4% were dissatisfied with their job. But many of them cited issues with high caseload, scheduling and time management, unrealistic productivity, lack of materials and support, and unrealistic paperwork demands. They also cited a lack of staff, no recognition or awards, working outside of their scope of practice, large groups, and bureaucracy as reasons they were dissatisfied with their careers. And in the 2020 study from Revisit Brazilian Medicine, 52.3% of speech pathologists cited high emotional exhaustion. They said that they were exhausted due to high caseloads, long work days, excessive commitments and paperwork demands, and a lack of recognition. Do any of those things sound like things that have happened to you on your job. I see people as the thumbs are going up. Yeah, so these are things that I think across the board we can say, and that doesn't only apply to school-based SLPs, right? I think that across the board, and I have friends who work in the medical setting, and I've heard things like, there's a lot of times where they don't feel that there's recognition for what they do, or people just don't understand our scope of practice. Sometimes we have so much paperwork that you feel like there's a tug of war through treatment or paperwork. So I think that this is something that happens across the board. But this tells us, all this data tells us, is that most SLPs are satisfied with their careers, but there's so many pressures and obstacles that come along, and it hinders us from doing our jobs effectively. And so due to that, we're going to kind of discuss some of the reasons for dissatisfaction that can lead to burnout. And then after that, I'll try to give some tips and techniques that I think that could help us a little bit. Everyone okay? You hanging in there with me? I know data can sometimes be just really very verbose. Okay, so one of the first things we saw is that people are just overwhelmed, right? Excuse me. We wear so many hats. Speech pathologists that have so many moving parts to our jobs. And right now I'm really kind of talking more in this sense, I'm talking more about school-based SLPs just because that's what I am, but medical SLPs definitely have a lot of moving parts. And I dare say that they are a little bit more on the go than we are, because it's very fast paced. It's very moment by moment, because you're dealing with people who are sick. So, there's a lot of moving parts to their jobs too, but in terms of the school-based SLPs, we're responsible for paperwork. We're responsible for doing IEPs, right, which are individualized educational programs for those who don't know. We are responsible for treatment. So we're responsible for providing therapy and also keeping track of the therapy, right, tracking our data. We're responsible for meetings, from if it's an IEP meeting to maybe you sit on a committee of something in your school. You are responsible for so many different things, and you are expected to do that job like flawlessly. Another thing, COVID. I mean, I feel like I don't really need to say anything else with COVID, because COVID within itself is something that we're still going through. And clearly it's something that has created so many different areas and needs for concern that I think we're going to be seeing that for years to come. In the way that COVID has impacted us, not just in the schools. I'm thinking about how it's impacted us in terms of socialization and just jobs, politics, all of that stuff. So COVID definitely has had us overwhelmed. When I talk about medical SLPs, I mean, medical speech pathologists got no breaks. No breaks, not one break. At least you could say, well, school-based SLPs got a chance to work from home remotely, but is that really a break? Working from home was not a break, not at all. Some people might say, well, you just rolled out of bed, you kept your pajamas on, maybe you threw on a different shirt so people couldn't tell what you had on the bottom, and you sat in your house. Okay, but not everyone has a place to sit in their house to provide therapy or to work, right? If you have other people in your home, it's asking people to be quiet all day long while you provide therapy. Also, if you have a dog, if you have someone that you take care of in your home, if you have kids, if you have multiple children, that's like having to find different places to put all these multiple children alongside yourself and find it to be quiet so that you can do your job. It was really stressful. And it's still stressful. So another thing that we've talked about is just being underprepared, excuse me. Many new SLPs feel like they have caseloads that are filled with differing diagnoses and they don't know how to treat them at the same time. So right now I have a student clinician who is at my site, and one of her questions is always, how are you able to work with 3 different children at the same time and target 3 different goals within the same lesson? That takes a level of skill. That also takes a level of planning, right? You can't just jump into it and say, okay, I'm just going to do this. No, you really need to think about what you're targeting for each specific child and see how you can integrate it into one lesson. So that takes some preparing. You need to prepare beforehand. Also, our methods and systems are not in place, so it makes us underprepared. So what I mean by that is, again, when I'm talking about preparation, if you didn't sit down to think about how I could really organize myself beforehand to make it work, then you're going to feel underprepared and you're going to get overwhelmed. Another thing that can be a big stressor, or two things that can happen, is that we are micromanaged sometimes, and we also have that imposter syndrome. So when I talk about micromanage, just feeling like we're not respected in our field. How many people have felt like that before in the field? Yeah, like you're at work, and it goes different ways. Like I said, the medical SLPs might say, you know, I walked into the room, I gave an order or a prescription for Thicket. I came in and maybe the nurse wasn't using it. And you know, they said X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, the doctor said blah, 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 right? So that's like someone is not taking your expertise, your level of expertise in that particular discipline, in that particular area. They're not listening to what you're advocating for your client. And that still happens. Being micromanaged still can happen in a school system as well. I've had many different experiences where I've had people say things to me like, oh, I'm going to go back to be a speech pathologist. You guys don't do much. I've heard that. I've also had other disciplines telling me what they think that I should do. Well, you need to work on this. And so my response, and you know, you don't have to respond like me, but my response is, so when you get your degree and that says CCC-SLP behind your name, then you can tell me what I can do. Because I worked hard for this degree, and we all worked hard for our degree. And it's really frustrating when you are not seen as a professional to others, right? It's really disheartening when people feel as if they know better than you in your area of expertise. So that could definitely be a reason for you to feel stressed and to feel burnout. Also, that self-doubt, feeling like you're an imposter. Why do we doubt ourselves? Why do we feel like we are not worthy sometimes of being able to speak on our area of expertise? Am I the only person who's felt like that before? Don't make me feel like I'm by myself, because I know that, you know, I've had conversations and I don't think I'm the only one. So sometimes we just feel like we just can't do it, or we feel like that imposter syndrome on the inside. So I want to start kind of talking about ways that we can combat these feelings. I think that if we talk about how we can set up organizational strategies and approaches, I think that it will help us to be more effective in the long run. So that's what we're going to start talking about now. And don't worry if you're starting to get tired, I totally understand. There's going to be points during this presentation where you're going to see a Menti meter go up. And that's just to kind of get some feedback from you guys, okay? So the first thing I wanted to show you is a management system. Let me just take a sip of water. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is our management systems. So we know that we have to track data. When I sit in schools, and I remember when school started this whole thing about data collection, I hate to say I felt like I was being a little like snotty, but I was like, well, isn't that a given? Isn't data a given? But I think the reason I responded that way is because data is something that is integrated into everything that a speech pathologist does. From the moment you start school, all they do is talk about data, right? So for us, data-driven instruction, it's like, of course it's data-driven instruction, because you're always taking notes and you have feedback on whatever you're teaching to a client. But I think it's just different for us. So anyway, I said all of that to say that these are two forms that I came up with. Over the years, I tweaked them and changed them. And of course, during COVID, I did something a little different because I didn't want to print out any paper at home on my own. So I was kind of being a little like, I don't want to do that. But these are two systems that I came up with. And you see that it looks like chicken scratch to you guys, but it actually makes sense to me. So what this is just my kind of way to track my session plans. All the way on the far left-hand side, it's covered, but that's where I would usually have the day. And then I would also have students' names in that first column. I would also, if I had like multiple students, so if I had a group of 3 or maybe 2 in a group, I would put the same 2 names in one box. Right next to it, right here in this portion is where I'm writing in what I'm actually targeting for that particular day. In the part right here that's already pre-populated, it says materials or strategies. So right there, I might talk about what types of maybe verbal and visual prompts and cues, additional time delay, some of the things you see here, repetition, verbal praise, adaptive materials, depending on the students I'm working with. And then usually I could just like circle it or put a line through them. And then over here on the right-hand side is actually what happened in the session. So that's where I would put my data. Okay. And you'll see there are letters next to certain things. That's because it might have been a group and I was just trying to differentiate who I was talking about. So these are some ways that I have come up with to kind of keep track of my session plans. There are ways to make it a little bit easier for you. So you can pre-populate it. So the same way that I put those materials and strategies, it's typed in. There have been times, not on these sheets, but there have been times when I will actually sit down and type in what I'm working on for the client. And that way it makes it easier when I go to actually go to the encounter attendance or the data collection system. I could just type in really easy what I did in the session. And you can, fill in the blanks depending on your students and the diagnoses. And it depends on the population of the students, but sometimes the goals can kind of stay for a little bit, right? So it does take a little bit of time in the beginning, but once you set this up, it cuts down on your planning every day and every week. You would just be able to switch out materials and activities when needed. And also, these are other parts of management systems. We're still continuing with the management system. This is a fill in the blank form that I created to optimize time because I just, I think that all speech pathologists, we really don't have that much time, right? So we're really trying to hurry up and get through what we need to do. So this is what I've come up with. The places that you see blue are where you would actually fill in the blank with like the student's name or the behaviors presented. And then there are places, so like where it says blank presented as excited, engaged for today's session. So you could circle it or cross it out. There are also places that you could copy and paste. So you could take this whole thing here and copy and paste it into your encounter attendance system, but you already have like a fill in the blank for whichever clients you're dealing with. And then I put this next step in here because sometimes, based on what happened in your session, it kind of gives you a clue into what you're going to do in the next session or what you might have to change. So, you could just put a really quick next step. So, the next time, okay, this is what I'm going to target. And then over here on the right-hand side, so I do have a planner. It's called the Effective SLP Planner. This was the second planner that I had. The first one, I used the feedback from the Busy SLP Planner to kind of make changes and revise this one to make it a little bit more inclusive for everyone and their needs. So it definitely can be utilized to assist you with remembering where and when you're supposed to be someplace and when you have something that's due. Inside the planner, it has a page for IEP due dates. It has student and caregiver information forms and a blank schedule for you to plan out your sessions. And there also is an area for self-care. So I'll talk about that more in how you can get it if you're interested. But I just wanted to put that here because this is one of the ways that I use to help myself become more organized and stay on task and target. I'm not just someone who, talks about it. I actually use my own planner. It looks crazy in here and I have papers that are falling out of it as I show you guys because I actually use my own planner and it's been very helpful to help me get organized. But I'll talk more about that as we go on. Oops, let's go back. Okay, so this is a point where I'm going to ask everyone to jump in and do a Menti. So I want to know what your favorite form of self-care is. So I put up some pictures of some of my favorite forms of self-care. I like music and I like to dance. I'm starting to get into meditation. So that's something I put up. I I've realized that I love to hate to exercise, but I still love it anyway. Journaling is something that some of my friends have talked about. I'm not so consistent with it, but I definitely see the benefits of it. Massages, I love. I love facials. I love anything that has to do with skin. And one of my new obsessions is nails. Getting my nails done is a form of self-care. And this is actually my hand, because I take pictures of every time I get my nails done, just because I love the different designs that my nail technician comes up with. And to me, it's a form of pampering myself. So I want to know, what are some of your favorite forms of self-care? So I'm going to stop sharing for 1 second. And I put up a Menti. I'm going to give you the link. I'm going to just type out where you can go for this. And then I'm going to give you the code that you need for the Menti. And then I'm going to share my screen so that everyone can see what our favorite forms of self-care are. And I'm going to share my screen again so we can all see it. And sorry. Okay, so what are our favorite forms of self-care? So if you can go to the Menti, and then you can type in, what's your favorite form of self-care? Okay, someone says massages. What are your favorite forms of self-care? Oh, listening to music. That's a good one. Oh, a heavy journal, or nails. Yes. Okay. Yeah, so I think some of us share a lot of the same: yoga, meditation, journaling. Okay. Yes, I love to read also. So reading a good book, music, watching a good show, poetry, and nails. So these are all really great things, right? So these are ways that we can really, take care of ourselves. I'm going to stop sharing again. We really just need to take care of ourselves and think about how we can definitely put ourselves first. So I'm just going to switch off of this. Sorry, I'm trying to open back up the presentation. Okay, and here we go. Okay, so we talked about our favorite forms of self-care, and now we're going to talk about something else, which is talking about when we need help. We need to prioritize saying, I need help. I say this as someone who has a really hard time saying she needs help. And I'm working on it, because I am that friend who would never ask for help. I am that one who would suffer in silence. And it's not a good thing, because I have so many people around me who are so supportive and so helpful. And you're not doing anyone a favor by suffering alone. But there's this, especially in our community, about seeking help, right? And we keep thinking that there's such a bad thing with counseling or talking to someone, but I think it's great to speak to someone to help you navigate your feelings and how you relate to others in the world. And I even went to therapy at one point. I actually really cool that I did teletherapy. And I did teletherapy when I was going through a difficult time, and I really wanted to learn how to move forward and move on in a healthy manner and not take bad energy and bad habits with me. And it was really, really helpful. Therapist was really nice, and she taught me a lot of really great and useful tips. So I think that we definitely need to learn how to prioritize seeking help. Okay. So we're going to keep going. Boundaries is something I want to talk about next. Boundaries. You can just use the thumbs up feature. How many people have trouble setting boundaries? I have trouble setting boundaries. I'm getting better. I have trouble setting certain types of boundaries. There are some boundaries I have no problems with, and then others I do. So these are 8 forms of trying to set up boundaries that I came up with from the careercontessa.com. She says you need to assess your personal boundaries, communicate upfront, create clear structures, keep your relationships professional, delegate work when appropriate, learn how to say no, actually take time off, and use technology to help. So you have to set up boundaries that you are comfortable with. What may be a hard no for me might be something that's okay with you. So for instance, there are 3 of the boundaries, ways that you create boundaries, and there are 3 that I highlighted because I think that these are really important. Assessing your personal boundaries. You need to know what you're okay with. So for instance, for me, I do not take work calls or answer texts that are related to work on the weekends for my full-time job. Now, some people are okay with that, and that is fine. But for me, I do not do it. Reasons why: 1, I get paid from another job to work at home. So I am all about, prioritizing my time. Also, it's my time. It's not time to work on whatever's at work. It's my time for me and my family and whatever I choose to do with it. So I don't want to talk about certain things that have to do with work when I'm not at work, but that's just personally me. I've had coworkers call me like a Saturday afternoon, like, hey, can we talk about such and such as IEP? No, ma'am, I will speak to you on Monday, starting at 8:00, because that's my boundaries that I don't want to talk about those things until we get back to work. But for other people, that's fine, but you need to see what works best for you. That's a hard boundary for me. Also, another thing that we need to remember is that we need to learn how to say no. No is something, and that's a way of taking care of yourself. Saying no, setting a limit to what you will and what you won't do. We also need to learn how to take time off. Some people don't know how to stop. Some people don't know how to say, okay, we're done. It's 2:20, it's 4:00. I'm closing it up. I'm going home, and that's it. Some people take that work home with them. And when you continue to take the work home after you've already done the work, it feels like if you're never stopping from work. So you really need to learn how to create that boundary for yourself that I'm done. Even if you're working from home, you can create that boundary of being like, I'm done. During remote learning, I remember saying like, okay, I'm working here and the computer is closed and that's it. I am not opening back up the computer. I'm not saying, oh, well, let me do. No, it's closed until it's time for me to start again the next day. So we have to learn how to create those boundaries for ourselves. Okay, now we're going to talk about another form of of self-care is positive affirmations. So how do you affirm yourself? This is something that I've realized is so important, not just for myself, but I even realized with my son, trying to say positive affirmations in the morning before he goes to school so that I don't want him to hear other people tell him things about himself. I want him to be able to speak to himself and to speak life into him. And so that I can also speak life into him as well. And because if you leave it up to the world to affirm you, you're not going to get anything that's positive, right? We need to learn how to affirm ourselves. So there are some apps that you could use out there. There's an app like I Am that is available. You have a trial basis with I Am, and then they have a small fee that you have to pay. I know that Amazon even has stickers that you can place around your home. One of my friends was telling me that she bought these stickers and it was really cool. She has all these stickers around her house. She has it on her mirror and like places that she'll walk and kind of look at. So you can do that. You can even look them up on Google. You can do a Google search for affirmations, or you could even create your own. And that's something I think that is great because I think, like I said, affirmations help you to speak life into yourself or to speak life into your job. And it helps you to remind yourself that you are positive, you're powerful, and it's a great way to build yourself up, right? And to keep yourself in a positive place. We have to speak to ourselves. We can't wait for the world to speak to us. We need to speak to ourselves. So again, I'm going to stop sharing here. And if you guys can do another Mentimeter with the same link, that 1511-3974, I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to put that same link in again. Oh, it's there again. Thank you, Terry, for helping me and putting those links in. And I'm going to bring up the Mentimeter. so that you guys can see. Yes. And okay. And let me just share the screen so you all can see again. And it did not move. Okay, well, that's interesting. Here we go. Oh, I guess I will not be showing you that because it's not showing up on my screen. Let me stop sharing. Yes, but anyway, I want you guys to think about ways that you can come up with positive affirmations for yourself. And that's something, even if we don't do the Mentimeter, I want you to think about, how can I start coming up with a positive affirmation for myself? What could I say to myself? What could I affirm for myself? And then ways of doing that are some of the types of ways that you can start saying that is, I am, right? I am powerful. I am. I can, my life, my work, my family, I will, I am becoming, right? Because these are powerful statements. These are statements that are talking about things as if they are so. So we have to speak as if they are so. Okay, so we are still in our solutions part, and we want to know, who are your people? So I know, I remember, being younger, and, maybe you go to some place and, a lot of older Southern people would say, like, who are your people, right? Who are your people? Who do you come from? Who's your tribe? It's like, where's your clan? Where's that group that makes you feel like you belong? And for us, I say, like, who are your speechies? Who's your speech fam, right? And why do you need a group? Why do you need people? The reasons, there's so many reasons, but we really need a group because we all need a place and a space to bounce ideas and thoughts off of. You want a place where you feel safe and you don't feel like judged for the things that you may say. When you have a speech community, it's really helpful because you have communication with like-minded individuals who can give you advice on maybe clients that you may have. Maybe you just don't remember how to do something and you kind of need to reach out to others. You can come up with different ways of attacking a problem or a challenging client that you have. They can provide you with different useful resources and activities and possible lessons, so it makes it easier for you. And you just don't feel alone, right? You get that support and you get help. So I'm going to talk more about, creating a tribe in a minute. So I just wanted to also give some resources, just because we were talking about self-care and we just talked about creating spaces for yourself. So these are a couple of resources that I found. So the Trauma Response Educational Practices is trepeducator.org. It's an integrative workplace that places self-care into the workday, and it teaches you how to do that for yourself. Also, Self-Care Speech is actually a site that's created by a speech pathologist with resources that target self-care and books. So talking about books within the self-care. And then Jesse Andrix is also another speech pathologist who provides meditation and ways to reduce stress. So I think that is these are really some great websites that can help you get started on your way to self-care if you're not sure how, or you're not sure what you like. These are really great ways that you can incorporate it into your daily practices every day. And so we've kind of reached the end of everything that I was talking about. And so I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the free things that I have. So I talked about the IEP due dates in the planner. And so everyone here tonight is able to get the IEP due date sheet that's in the planner. I'll show you that here's my IEP due date. I don't think you guys can see that because it's blurred out, but this is the one that's in my book that I've used. And it's really helpful and useful. So everyone here, I will get your email address from Ms. Terry, and then I will send that out to you as just for sticking around. And I appreciate you listening. I'll send you the IEP due dates. I also wanted you to know that at the bottom of the screen, you see I have this Facebook group. I have a Facebook group. It's called Effective SLPs, just so that we can just kind of keep in touch and if we need support, if we need help, if we just have anything that we want to bounce ideas off of each other, we have questions, maybe we just need a positive word. I have this Facebook group, so you can find it on Facebook, and I will put all the links into the description, into the chat as soon as the chat is finished. Also, I also wanted to show you again, I know I talked about this book. I don't think you guys can see it right now. It might be blurred, but this is my planner. It's called the Effective SLP Planner. It is dateless on the inside, so you can use it and you can fill it out, and it can be used over and over and over, or for whatever year you choose to use it for, years you choose to use it for. It usually goes for $20, but for anyone who is on tonight and would like to purchase it, you can go to effectiveslpplanner.com, use the code S.I.S.T.A.s, and you will get the planner for $12. I think it's a great resource. Like I said, I use it. I also, all the feedback that was given, I really integrated it into this book. I put the bookmark like people, talked about. I put a self-care portion. There's a portion for IEPs dates. There's a portion for contact information. There's a scheduler in here. I included as much as I could from the feedback that was given. So if you're interested, that is on sale for $12. Like I said, use the code S.I.S.T.A.s, and I will also put that link in the chat. And if you want to just kind of chat with me, maybe you have some questions, maybe you want to see how we could work on kind of creating a system that works for you, that is helpful, that helps you get organized, that helps you get all your systems in order in terms of organization, so that you're able to effectively move forward and treat your clients. And maybe you just want assistance with setting up some type of system for yourself that helps you with tracking your data. You can always schedule a chat with me on acuity.com. I will put that link also in the chat. And thank you guys for sticking around with me and talking about the burnout that sometimes happens in speech pathologists. Know that you are not alone. Know that we all are experiencing some form of overwhelm and stress, but I hope that, if we talk about it more and we just realize that we're not alone, we can get to the other side of it. So thank you so much, guys, for sticking in there with me. And again, you can follow me. You can follow me in Kit Therapy and Consulting under the same name. I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and that's the email address if you need to contact me. And these are just some of the references that I mentioned within the presentation.